He was a billionaire. She was a cleaning lady he had never truly noticed. But what he discovered after secretly following her one evening would turn his world upside down. Tell us in the comments where you're watching this story from, and take a moment to reflect. Are you really sure you know the people who live in the shadows of your world? Michael Raines, billionaire and founder of the Silverstream Investments empire, had built his entire life on a single principle: control. His mansion in the Windhill Heights neighborhood, surrounded by high walls and wrought iron gates, was a living embodiment of that principle. Every detail, from the marble floors to the crystal chandeliers, fell under his supervision. His business, his investments, his schedule, everything followed a strict order. But then, food started disappearing from the kitchen. At first, just small things: a bag of rice, a couple cans of tuna, a few apples. And within, Michael stirred a familiar feeling. Not anger, not suspicion, but the instinct that had made him one of the wealthiest men alive. The need to know, to investigate, to fix. At first, he thought it was a mistake. Maybe Franco, the chef, whose dishes were as impeccable as his record-keeping, had forgotten to log a few items. Or perhaps someone on staff was sharing food. But something didn't sit right. Michael didn't believe in coincidence, and his house was a machine where every part functioned with clockwork precision. So he decided to uncover the truth himself. He didn't call security. He didn't check the camera footage. Instead, on a Friday evening, he parked 3 blocks away in a black sedan with the headlights off. Hidden beneath the shadow of an old oak tree, he watched the gates, waiting for someone to make a move. He never expected it to be Eliza. Eliza Thompson had worked as a housekeeper in Michael's home for 6 years. Quiet, nearly invisible, she blended in with the surroundings, like the furniture or the paintings on the wall. She exited through the back door carrying 2 heavy bags. Michael felt a jolt, not of betrayal, but of realization. He had never truly seen her. She was part of the system, arriving at 7 a.m., leaving at 6 p.m., polishing floors, cleaning silver. He knew her schedule, but nothing about her life. He followed her. Eliza descended into the subway at Greenwood Station. Her figure flickered through the crowd. Michael hadn't taken public transport since college, and now every jolt of the train, every scent of sweat and metal, felt utterly foreign. Eliza never looked back. Her steps were steady, her face focused. He kept his distance until she entered an old apartment building in the Shady Row district. The walls were peeling, but the place was alive. Children played in the courtyard. Music drifted from open windows. Laughter echoed somewhere above. Eliza climbed to the 3rd floor, her pace slowing as if each step was a struggle. Michael noticed her wince and touch her lower back, but continue onward. Through the thin door, he heard her voice, soft, warm, not the tone she used to report that the rugs had been vacuumed. And then another voice spoke, a child's, weak and raspy. "Mom, the doctor said the tests are worse. We're out of medicine again." Eliza replied immediately. Her voice was calm but firm. "Don't worry, Oliver. We'll manage, just like always." Michael froze. His mind raced to process what he'd just heard. Out of medicine, the food bags, the missing pills from the cabinet in his guest bathroom. It all came together. This wasn't theft. This was survival. He left before she could see him, a tightness in his chest. Not shame, not pity. Something else. Humility. The next morning, Michael sat at breakfast, staring into his coffee, the steam rising in thin spirals. Eliza moved silently around the kitchen, efficient, invisible as always. But now he truly looked at her, noticed the tremble in her hands as she set down his plate, the shadows under her eyes, not from fatigue, but from the weight she carried. He wanted to speak, to ask about last night, about Oliver, about the medication, but the words wouldn't come. How do you start a conversation after 6 years of silence? Instead, he watched, remembered. Eliza had never been late, never complained, never asked for a raise or time off. Michael knew everything about her work, nothing about her life, and yet she knew everything about him. Which shirts he preferred, how he took his coffee, which books he left half-finished on the table. That night he returned to her building, not out of suspicion, not out of curiosity, but something else, something he still couldn't name. He stood in the dark hallway, listening as Eliza spoke to her son. "Mom, what if we run out of pills again?" Oliver's voice trembled. "We'll find a way, sweetheart, we always do," she answered. And Michael heard her voice crack, like she was holding back tears with everything she had. On Saturday he followed her again, but this time Eliza didn't go home. Carrying a worn box of books, she made her way to a small community center in the Brixton district. The building was old, its walls covered in graffiti, the fence leaning awkwardly to one side. As soon as she entered, she was surrounded by children, a dozen, maybe more. They shouted her name, hugged her, pulled at her hands. She smiled, and that smile transformed her. She began to read aloud. Her voice was clear, confident, alive. The Eliza Michael knew, the housekeeper, vanished. Before him stood a different woman, a leader, a guide, a beacon in a place most people wouldn't dare to enter. Michael leaned against the wall, stunned. Eliza, who cleaned his windows and folded his towels, ran a free reading club for children, using her own books, her own time, her own energy. No support, no praise, no recognition. And he had judged her for a missing bag of rice. Something inside him shifted. It wasn't pity. It was admiration, pure, unfiltered awe that made him rethink everything he believed about people, about life, about himself. The following Monday, Michael cancelled all his meetings. For the first time in years, he called his assistant Lucas and told him he was sick. It felt absurd for a man who never missed a day, but the thought of sitting in an office discussing stocks and contracts felt meaningless. He wandered through the city, streets he hadn't walked in decades, the markets on Cobble Lane, narrow alleys covered in murals, small cafes with chipped wooden chairs. It was the same city that had made him rich, but he realized he had never known its real face. Everywhere he looked, he saw people, not clients, not partners, just people living their lives. They didn't need his money or his name. They just needed to be seen. A few days later, he drove to the clinic on Hartford Avenue, the one Eliza took Oliver to. He waited outside, standing beneath an old lamppost. Eliza arrived, supporting her son, thin, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. She whispered something to him, adjusting his jacket gently. Michael watched her speak with the receptionist. Her voice was soft, pleading. "Please, can we split the payment? I don't have the full amount yet." The reply was cold. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Without full payment, we can't release the medication." Michael stepped forward without thinking. "Let me speak to Dr. Wilson." Eliza turned around. Their eyes met. There was no anger in hers, no surprise, only tired disappointment. Michael knew Dr. Wilson. He owed him a few favors from years ago. Michael explained the situation without going into detail, just asked him to help. When Eliza came out of the office, she stopped in front of him. "You followed me again," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was steel in it. "I did," Michael admitted. "At first, out of suspicion, then out of curiosity, and now I'm not sure anymore." "Why?" Her arms were crossed, her gaze direct. "I wanted to understand. First I thought you were stealing. Then I saw you were fighting. And now I just want to help." She shook her head. We don't need your help. I know, but I want to offer it. Not out of pity, out of respect. Her eyes narrowed. She was silent, weighing his words. Then she nodded. No smile, but something close to agreement. We're not a charity case. You're right. You're stronger than anyone I've ever known. That's why I'm here. She looked into his eyes, and in that moment, Michael saw her, not a housekeeper, not a shadow in his mansion, but a woman whose life was full of struggle, pride, and quiet strength. It changed him. He went home and stood in the foyer, staring at the shelves lined with awards, photographs, trophies. For the first time, they felt hollow. None of it could compare to what Eliza did every single day, carrying her burdens in silence. The following Saturday, Michael returned to the community center in Brixton. This time, he brought books, boxes of brand-new editions with vibrant covers, filled with stories about space, animals, and adventures. He didn't warn Eliza. He simply walked into the room and set the boxes down by the door. The children noticed him first. Their eyes lit up. They rushed to the boxes, laughing, flipping through the pages with wonder. Eliza looked at him. Her face wavered, not with fear, but with uncertainty. Thought they might like them, Michael said as he lifted another box. She didn't answer, but she stepped aside, allowing the kids to explore the books. Later, as they stood off to the side, she spoke quietly. They love you. Especially Oliver. He's special, Michael replied with a smile. Wants to be a doctor, right? Yes, she said softly. He says he'll find a cure, not just for himself, but for everyone. Her voice grew tender, and Michael saw something new in her eyes. Not defense. Warmth. You've raised an incredible boy, Eliza. I'm just a mother. She shrugged, her tone modest, but her gaze softer. I do what I have to. Not all mothers do. You fight, quietly, fiercely. She turned away, hiding her emotions, and together they stood in silence, watching the children read, laugh, and argue over stories. In that moment, Michael knew he wanted to be a part of this, not for recognition, not for legacy, but for meaning. Saturdays became a ritual. Michael began skipping meetings, missing investor dinners, ignoring phone calls. His employees whispered behind his back. Some thought he'd taken up golf. Others believed he was having an affair. He never explained, not because it was a secret, but because it was personal, sacred. He and Eliza didn't speak much, but each conversation felt real. They spoke about books, about children, about life. Oliver would sometimes sit beside him, reading slowly, guiding his finger across the lines. One day he asked, "Mr. Michael, do you think I can really become a doctor?" Michael looked him in the eyes. "You already are, Oliver. Right here." He placed his hand gently on the boy's chest. "And if your heart is even half as strong as your mother's, you'll change the world." Oliver smiled, and that smile stayed with Michael for a long, long time. But not everyone welcomed his transformation. His niece Laura, whom he had raised after his sister passed, noticed something had changed. One evening she stormed into his office, her eyes burning with frustration. "What's happening to you, Michael? You're skipping board meetings, giving away money to some no-return programs. People are saying you've lost your edge." "Maybe I've found something better," he said calmly. "What? Her? Eliza?" She spat the name like it offended her mouth. "She's your maid, Michael. Her name is Eliza, and this isn't about her. It's about me." Laura scoffed. "If you want to play savior, do it quietly. Don't tear down everything we've built." "We?" Michael looked at her. You mean the empire, the control? That's not what I need anymore, Laura. She slammed the door on her way out, but her words lingered. Not because she was right, but because he realized just how far he'd come from the man he used to be. His life, his success. It had all been built on the fear of losing control. Now he was learning to build on something else. Presence. Trust. One night Eliza called. Her voice was quiet, almost broken. Michael, Oliver's having complications. The tests, they're not good. Can you come? He was at the clinic within 30 minutes. Eliza stood at her son's bedside. Her hands were clenched so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Oliver lay sleeping, hooked up to monitors and machines. His face was pale, but peaceful. Michael spoke with Dr. Wilson. The doctor showed him scans, explained the risks. Surgery was possible, but expensive, complex, with no guaranteed outcome. Do everything it takes, Michael said. Money is not a problem. When Eliza found out, she came to him that same evening. I told you not to get involved. I know. Then why? Because I care, Eliza. Because I can't just stand by. She looked at him. Her eyes were full of questions. What do you want in return? Nothing. No one does this for nothing. I do. She was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. Tell me who you are, Michael. The truth? He told her. About a childhood without parents, about the sister who died too young, about raising Laura, about the emptiness that money never managed to fill, about how he had followed her and seen not a thief, but a fighter, about how her strength made him want to be better. She listened without interrupting, and when he finished, there were tears in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Go home, Michael, she said softly. I will. But know this. I don't pity you. I admire you. And I'm not going to disappear. She didn't answer, but she didn't stop him either. And that was enough. The next day, Michael received a letter from Oliver. The handwriting was shaky, uneven. Dear Michael, thank you for being different. Thank you for seeing us. I don't know what'll happen with the surgery, but I'm glad you're here. You made my mom smile. That doesn't happen much. Michael cried for the first time in years, and he prayed, even though he didn't believe in God, because for the first time in his life, money wasn't enough. The day of the surgery was cold. The sky blanketed in gray clouds. Michael drove them to the hospital himself. Eliza sat in the front, hands on her knees, motionless, like carved stone. Oliver hummed softly in the back seat, maybe to fight off fear. At the hospital, everything moved fast, forms, signatures, nurses. When the moment came, they walked him to the operating room. Eliza kissed his forehead, whispered something. Then Oliver turned to Michael. Michael, if I wake up, will you bring me a book about space? The biggest one they have, he promised. About Mars and more. Cool, Oliver smiled, and they wheeled him away. They waited in silence. Every phone ring, every footstep in the hallway made them flinch. Eliza sat staring at the floor. Michael sat beside her, unsure what to say. After several hours, she leaned slightly toward him, and he felt her fear as if it were his own. When the surgeon finally walked in and said, "He's stable," the surgery was a success, Eliza exhaled, as if for the first time all day. Her hand found his, and she held it. When they were allowed into the recovery room, Oliver looked so small, surrounded by tubes and monitors, but his chest rose evenly. The nurse said he was responsive. He moved his fingers, reacted to voices. The road to recovery would be long, but it was a road. Eliza fell asleep on the hospital couch. Michael stepped outside to call Laura. She didn't answer. He left a voice message. "I'm not the man I used to be. I've changed, Laura. Not out of guilt, not out of shame, but because I finally learned how to be present. If that makes me a fool, so be it. But it's my truth." The next day, people began arriving at the hospital. Neighbors, parents of the children from the reading club, even strangers. They brought flowers, books, notes. Someone had heard about Oliver, about Eliza, and they wanted to help. But Michael had already received more than he could have dreamed of. Purpose. He had built an empire on control, but it was a woman surviving on the edge, and a boy whose dreams were stronger than illness, who taught him the true value of life. This story isn't about money or charity. It's about the ability to truly see, and the choice to remain blind or finally recognize those beside you. If this story moved something inside you, give it a like and share it. Because sometimes the world changes not with loud declarations, but with a quiet question. What if I was wrong?